It was a Tuesday, or maybe a Wednesday. The days blurred then, as they do now. I walked a path I rarely took behind the old cannery. The air hung thick, damp, like a wet wool blanket. Weeds grew tall, they clawed at my ankles. The sun was a pale disk, hiding behind a grey sky. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting. There, nestled in the mud, beside a rusted pipe, something glinted, a dull glint. Not gold, not silver, something else. Later, under the weak light of my kitchen lamp, I looked at the key properly. It lay on the scarred wooden table. It seemed to absorb the light, not reflect it. The metal was dark, almost black, with a strange, oily sheen. It was cold to the touch, a deep, penetrating cold, like it had been resting in a tomb for centuries. Not just in some damp earth behind a forgotten factory. This cold was older, much older. The design was intricate, but not beautiful. It was unsettling, full of sharp angles and curves that seemed to writhe, like captured snakes. Tiny symbols were etched into its surface. I did not recognize them. They were not letters. I left the key on the table. It was an old rusty thing, something that seemed to belong to another era. I'd found it in a dusty corner of the attic, hidden away in a small, ornate box. The moment I touched it, a chill ran down my spine, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It felt important, like it held some kind of secret, but I could not forget it. Even as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind kept drifting back to that key. It was as if it had a presence, a silent hum that filled the room and my thoughts. I tried to push it out of my mind, but it was no use. It was a dark spot in my vision. No matter where I looked, I could see it out of the corner of my eye. It was like a shadow that followed me, always there, always watching. I started to feel paranoid, glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see something or someone lurking in the shadows, even when I wasn't looking. The feeling of being watched never left me. It was as if the key had eyes, and it was observing my every move. I couldn't shake the feeling, no matter how hard I tried. It was always there, in the back of my mind, a constant, unnerving presence. I felt it there, accusing, demanding. It was as if the key was waiting for something, expecting me to do something, but what? I had no idea. The more I thought about it, the more anxious I became. I started to dread going home, knowing that the key would be there, waiting for me. Its silence was a shout. The quiet in my apartment became oppressive, almost deafening. The key's presence filled the room, a silent scream that echoed in my mind. I couldn't escape it, no matter where I went or what I did. It seemed to watch me as I moved around my small apartment, making coffee, reading a book. Every mundane task was accompanied by the feeling of being observed. I tried to ignore it, to go about my day as if everything was normal, but it was impossible. The key's presence was too strong. Its presence filled the room, a cold, metallic weight. It was as if the key had a life of its own, a dark energy that permeated the air. The atmosphere in my apartment became heavy, almost suffocating. I could feel the key's weight pressing down on me, a constant reminder of its existence. I tried to cover it with a cloth, but the feeling remained, unchanged, undiminished. The cloth did nothing to hide the key's presence. It was still there, lurking beneath the fabric, its silent hum filling the room. I felt a sense of hopelessness, knowing that there was no way to escape it. Sleep became a strange country. I could no longer find rest. Every night I tossed and turned, unable to escape the key's presence. It invaded my dreams, turning them into nightmares that left me waking up in a cold sweat. The dreams started almost immediately. They were not pleasant. They were filled with dark, twisted images that left me feeling unsettled and afraid. I would wake up, heart pounding, the key's presence still lingering in my mind. They were full of long, dark corridors, endless hallways that seemed to stretch on forever with no end in sight. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, adding to the sense of dread that filled my dreams. Doors that slammed shut just as I reached them. Every time I thought I had found a way out, the door would slam shut in my face, trapping me in the darkness. It was a never-ending cycle of fear and frustration. The air in these dreams was thick. It was hard to breathe, as if the very atmosphere was trying to suffocate me. The fog and mist added to the sense of disorientation, making it impossible to find my way. like the air behind the cannery, the same heavy, oppressive feeling that I had experienced in my waking life. It was as if the key had brought its own atmosphere with it, a dark, suffocating presence that I couldn't escape. I had no old locks in my apartment, no ancient chests. My home was a modern sanctuary filled with sleek furniture and the latest gadgets. Everything had a place, and everything was in its place, or so I thought. No forgotten doors that might fit such a key. The doors in my apartment were all new, with shiny modern locks. There was no room for anything old or mysterious, so it remained on my table. A relic from another time, out of place in my contemporary world. It was a curious object, one that seemed to hold secrets of its own, a silent, brooding monarch of my small space. It commanded attention, even in its stillness. I found myself drawn to it, wondering about its origins and purpose. But then things began to happen. Small things at first. A pen rolling off the table, a book falling from a shelf, things that could easily be explained away, things I might have dismissed. Flickering lights, the cat staring intently at something unseen. But there was a pattern, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, if not for the key. It seemed to be at the center of it all, a catalyst for the strange occurrences. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me, if not for the feeling it gave me, a sense of unease, a prickling at the back of my neck. It was as if the key was trying to tell me something, to warn me. The world around me was starting to fray, just a little, at the edges, like old fabric. The familiar was becoming unfamiliar, the known was becoming unknown. The window in my living room. It had always been a source of light and warmth, a connection to the outside world. It had been painted shut for years, a relic of a previous tenant's attempt to keep out the cold. I had accepted it as part of the apartment's quirks. I'd tried many times to open it. It never budged. No amount of force or tools could break the seal of paint that held it closed. One morning I found it wide open. The paint had cracked and peeled away as if by some unseen hand. The air was crisp and cold, a stark contrast to the warmth inside. A chill wind blew through the room. It carried with it the scent of rain and earth, a reminder of the world beyond my walls. Making the curtains dance like ghosts, they moved with a life of their own, whispering secrets in the language of the wind. The key was lying on the windowsill. It had moved from the table as if it had a will of its own. I knew then that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't yet understand. The sound started subtly, a faint scratching, like tiny claws, inside the walls of my apartment. At first, I thought it was mice, or the building settling, but the sound was too rhythmic, too deliberate. It moved. One night it was in the bedroom wall, the next in the kitchen, always close, but always hidden. The key on my nightstand seemed to vibrate faintly when the scratching was near. Or perhaps that was just my hand shaking, the whispers from my dreams. They were no longer confined to sleep. I began to hear them when I was awake, faintly, at the very edge of my hearing, like snatches of a distant conversation carried on the wind. My own reflection became a stranger. It was as if the mirror had a mind of its own, warping reality just enough to make me question my sanity. I would look in the bathroom mirror, and for a split second, the face looking back was not quite mine. Its expression was different, colder. It felt like an alternate version of myself, one that existed in a parallel universe where everything was just a bit off. Its eyes moved a fraction of a second too late. A tiny, horrifying lag. It was as if the reflection was mimicking me, but with a delay that sent chills down my spine. The lag was subtle but unmistakable, making me wonder if I was losing my grip on reality. Then it would snap back. The normalcy was almost more unsettling than the distortion. It was as if the mirror was playing a cruel joke, giving me just enough time to doubt myself before returning to its usual state, my own familiar, frightened face. But the doubt remained. Was I seeing things, or was there something more sinister at play? The fear lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind, making me question every glance in the mirror. Or was the mirror showing me something else? Something hidden beneath the surface of my own reflection. The idea that the mirror could reveal a hidden truth was both terrifying and intriguing, something the key had awakened. The key, with its ancient and mysterious aura, seemed to hold the power to unlock more than just physical doors. It felt like it had opened a gateway to another realm, one where reality was fluid and ever-changing. The colors of the world began to change. Sometimes everything seemed dull, washed out. as if the vibrancy of life had been drained away, leaving behind a monochrome existence that felt lifeless and bleak, as if a layer of grey dust covered everything. The world looked like an old photograph, faded and forgotten, with all its colours muted and subdued. Other times colours were too bright, too intense, painful to look at. The vibrancy was overwhelming, almost blinding, as if the world was trying to compensate for its previous dullness by turning up the saturation to an unbearable level. The green of the park was a lurid, unnatural green. It was a shade that didn't belong in nature, almost neon in its intensity, making the grass and trees look like they were part of a surreal painting. The red of a passing car was like blood. It was a deep, visceral red that evoked a sense of danger and unease, as if the car itself was a harbinger of something ominous. The sky was a bruised purple. The clouds looked like they had been painted with a heavy hand, their dark hues creating an atmosphere of impending doom. The world outside my window looked less real. It was as if I was looking at a scene from a dream or a nightmare where everything was familiar yet disturbingly different. More like a garish, poorly painted stage set. The artificiality of it all was unsettling, making me feel like I was trapped in a play where the lines were blurred between reality and illusion. One night the whispers were louder, the scratching more insistent. I couldn't bear it. I took the key in my hand. Its coldness was a shock, but also a focus. I sat on my bed. The room was dark, only the faint glow from the streetlights outside. I closed my eyes. I held the key tightly. I tried to clear my mind. I focused on the key, on its weight, its coldness, its sharp edges. I wanted to see. I needed to understand, even if it terrified me. A vision bloomed behind my eyelids, not a memory, not a dream. I had to know more. The symbols on the key, they were the only clue. I spent hours online searching obscure databases, ancient alphabets, occult forums. Nothing matched. The symbols remained a mystery, taunting me with their secrecy. I went to the library, pored over dusty books on folklore, mythology, forgotten languages. My eyes burned, my head ached, but I kept searching, driven by a growing dread. Then I found it, not in a book, but on a forgotten corner of the internet. A tiny archived forum from years ago. The post was short. I had to get rid of it. The key was a horror, a blight on my life. The next morning I walked to the river. The water was grey and churning. I stood on the bridge. The key felt heavy in my hand, heavier than ever. I threw it as hard as I could. It spun through the air, a dark speck against the pale sky. It hit the water with a small splash and disappeared. I felt a moment of relief, a tiny, fragile hope. It was gone, but the relief was short-lived. The next morning, it was back, lying on my bedside table, cold, silent.